Hello and welcome back to the Premier Injuries podcast. It's been a little bit of a while since we've done FPL exactly related stuff. It's been a little bit of a while since you have seen Linn on the channel, but as usual, we're back to our weekly topics, our weekly discussion. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, comment below if you want any requests for injury or data analysis. We are here for you. Today, we're talking a bit of like a reflection period. I guess, January is the time for New Year's resolutions, reflecting on one's own actions and giving an evaluation as to whether you've done good or bad things through the year. I mean, Ben, do you think you've been a bad boy in 2021 or are you been a good lad?
Always a good lad, me. Absolutely, without question. A good young Catholic lad.
And Linn, can you say with a straight face if you've been good or bad?
Somewhere in between, fairly good, and some bad spells.
That's probably the best position in between, isn't it? You can have the fun of the bad and enjoy the highlights of the good. But this applies to FPL as well. And so we're kind of giving an analysis of what we believe ourselves, but also the community have made big mistakes, but also good things towards the end of this season, because I think, you can learn from the first half of the season. It's not all over yet. We've still got a long way to go towards that game week 38. We're only on 22 games, and hopefully this will help as well. So I think the first big thing, Ben, you wanted to bring this one up, is the form versus fixtures debate. What are your thoughts and feelings on that one?
Yeah, I mean, this ties in with the topic that we did touch upon earlier, and it's about the mistakes of that first half of the season. And this is probably something that I was a little bit guilty of. And what really annoys me when I make a mistake in FPL is the ones that I go against my own instinct, and you get suckered in by the double game week fixtures. What I would say with regards to where we are with form over fixtures, for me at this moment in time, and maybe for the remainder of the season, so this second part, there are no fixtures. There is no fixture difficulty for me, because we're talking about clubs which are overstretched. We're talking about limited rotation. We're talking about the number of injuries, COVID-related absences going through the roof. You don't know which team will be put out by their respective managers or coaches from one game week to the next, particularly in a double game week. We've seen a couple of fixtures already by the time of recording. 6 changes, 5 changes, and 4 changes with regards to that. It's a logistical minefield. You just cannot rely on it. And if you're prepared or you're thinking about taking a chance, taking hits, using free hits, using your wildcard target in those double game week fixtures, then just take a look at what's happened over Christmas and then more recently, with the fixtures with regards to Burnley and the possibility of their second fixture being cancelled against Watford as well.
So kind of throwing it to you, Linn, are you kind of in agreement with this form versus fixtures debate? Is it all about the quality of the data and the player for you? You kind of look at XG through the season and also kind of short-term good form as well, rather than looking, so-and-so is playing Norwich. This has got to be a time when I get them in.
I don't think you should look at just one metric. You need to look at the whole concept, the whole scenery, because it's not just a double game week. It's who are they playing? You actually have to look at that, as well as is it likely that they're going to play a double game week? That's a new one.
Yeah.
And then, of course, look at XG. Is it likely that this player is going to haul, or is he playing in a role that makes him less likely to score a goal? So you just got to take everything into consideration, I think.
I think that this is the thing, is like looking through the season, I've tried, and Ben hit it on the head as well. There's been moments where I've kind of neglected my core beliefs and gone, I fancy a punt on this week or something. But you kind of look at maybe these stretches where, so for example, now in the short term, Everton have got like the second best run of fixtures over the next 6 game weeks. But then you kind of drill down and go, well, actually, they've been appalling both in attack and defence over the last 6 game weeks, but also through the whole of the season. And I think a lot of people got really tempted, as we have seen, to getting in Ronaldo in this double game week. They kind of fixated, oh, it's Ronaldo, he's playing Aston Villa and Brentford. And I think first and foremost, they forgot how bad Manchester United have been, but also how good Aston Villa have been. It was a 2-2 draw in the end. Ronaldo didn't feature at all, so you kind of can't say whether he was good or bad because he didn't play at all. But it's just been interesting for me, kind of people fixating, oh my God, it's a double game week, I've got to load up on all these fixtures. I suppose that's what the free hit is there for, but a lot of people have been taking hits to get players in. And the question has to be to them, do I want them in for this double game week and beyond? Otherwise, you kind of hitting yourself in the long run, aren't you? Because you're not going to have a player that you want to play. I mean, do you ever take a 1 week punt, Lynn? Or is it always kind of for the next 3, 4, 5 fixtures?
Well, if my 1 week punt doesn't actually affect any one of my core players, I don't mind it. But I wouldn't trade a core player for a punt.
That's a good insight there. And I guess to you as well, Ben, or does the kind of, from your way of looking at things, you know, the injury aspect, are you like too concerned of taking a 1 week punt?
At the minute, I'm almost treating every game week as a short-term punt. Maybe not a 1 week punt, but certainly, you cannot plan too far ahead in 2 or 3 sort of game weeks. Given the current situation, it can literally change overnight. So, look, I'm not one for just bringing in players for the sake of, a 1 week punt or a particular fixture, because there are absolutely no guarantees. And as you know, I don't like to take any hits whatsoever, and I will do my utmost to ensure that hasn't happened. It hasn't happened this season. Just double checking, it didn't happen last season, and I'm almost thinking that didn't happen the season before as well. So, that effectively sort of rules any kind of really 1 week short-term punt out of the equation. But like I say, it's sometimes to the detriment. I have been occasions on game weeks, I think I went with 6 1 week and maybe 7 or 8 in another. But, I'm prepared to take that chance and just roll with it and see where it leads.
Just before we go on to continue the analysis, we saw that Lynn had not a punt, but a pint there. What's the brew that you're running with today?
Well, I've been to Norway over New Year's and I brought back some of my favorite beer. And one of them is called a Juicy IPA, and it's so good.
There you go. Juicy IPA, bit of advertisement there for you. Norway's absolute finest. But I guess a good question there, relating to Ben's point there, Lynn, does the kind of sticking to a core ideology like that sometimes do you down in the long term? Do you think that this kind of not taking a hit thing is also a bad thing? I mean, what kind of rules have maybe this season brought for you, or just in general, do you have when you take a hit? Because I'm sure you have taken a hit or two this season.
I don't actually mind taking hits if I think they will pay off. Like the last game week, I did James, Pukki and Martinelli to Antonio, Dawson and Bowen. And they actually scored, because I had Bowen captain as well. They scored me quite a lot of more points than the original players. And that was a -8 hit. And I must have gained 30, 40 points.
That's a big one. And they're long-term picks as well. So you didn't just get them in for the 1 week punt. You thought they're going to be good over the long term, but you wanted them for that double. But is there kind of a checklist? Obviously, Ben, I can't ask this question to you, but Lynn, what is the kind of checklist that you have when you're taking a hit? What do you say to yourself, right, this needs to be done, or this player needs to have this kind of stats or fixtures ahead that I will definitely take a hit and not be worried about this?
I think you need to look at the player you plan to transfer out. How many points is this player likely to get me? Not just this game week, but say over the next 3-4 game weeks. And if that answer is 0 to 2 points, then feel free to transfer him out for a hit. It's going to pay off.
Let's move it then on to another thing that Ben Lynn, or all of us have kind of said here on the podcast through the season, but I think a lot of people have been caught out. It's coping with cancellations. I think, Ben, you're kind of in the best position for explaining on this one. What do you think is the best methodology for fantasy Premier League players, fan team players, whatever kind of fantasy you play, to avoid the disappointment of cancellations, games, injuries, because it seems to be even more prevalent at the moment than usual?
Yeah, I mean, how long have we been banging the drum about having a deep, strong bench, first and foremost, to try and have, wherever possible, at least 14 players that are playing at 15, with the goalkeeper. So you've got that little bit of a safety net should the game be cancelled. And also avoid captain and vice-captain players in the same fixture. Guilty, Your Honour, by the way, last weekend. Not really sure how that happened. I think I took a punt on Everton, and I went with Dina actually as my differential captaincy, and backed him up with DCL. So that didn't really work out quite well. And like I say, you need to try and look at the longevity, the robustness of players. Try to go for those players who tend to play 90 minutes, who tend to play game week to game week. The players that won't start games in quick succession. Maybe it's because of age. Maybe they're carrying slight niggles. Maybe managers, we go back to, those squads with lots of strength and depth, Cities, Uniteds, even Arsenal to an extent, although Mikel Arteta has stuck pretty much with his starting 11. Squads where there is lots of rotation possible, there's lots of risk. There's lots of interchanging, there's lots of fluidity within a formation. I think Brighton's been a particularly difficult team to pick this season. We've seen Graham Potter go from 3-5-2 to 4-2-3-1, 3-4-3, 4-4-2. And it makes it very difficult when looking at maybe getting some of those Brighton assets in, exactly one, who to pick, and two, how those players are going to be deployed. We've seen it with Trossard out of position, midfielder playing up front. That's maybe one where we've benefited from that. But sometimes we've seen Pascal Gross drop a little bit deeper into maybe either on the right-hand side or in that 4-2, that sort of holding role as well. And, you're really looking at the likes of Pascal Gross because you're wanting those assists, those offensive returns. So, like I say, try and understand maybe how managers are going to set up, understand how players can be deployed, and then try to mitigate any risk in and around those upcoming fixtures.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things, and I'm sure Lynn will back this up as well, is I've seen a lot of people taking risky picks in terms of maybe the Ronaldo pick this game week, but also through the season on players that we know will have to be rotated or rested because they've just had such a tight schedule. And it's kind of making that planning ahead as well. Sometimes maybe they're not as an interesting pick, but you got to have players out there. You got to have the 11. I mean, Lynn, if somebody has fantastic data, but that they're only going to play 75, 80% of the games this season, do you think that they're worth the risk, in your opinion?
They can be if they're not too expensive. I wouldn't take that kind of punt on a player, say a premium player. But if you take like Martinelli, for example, or Coutinho now, I would say yes, they're a very good enabler. They can, if you don't want to play them one game week, you can just bench them and it's not a problem.
And that's what the squad's there for as well, isn't it? To kind of enable those situations. The next kind of point maybe for people to learn from, to improve from is, and I think there might be a divide in the group here, price rises versus late transfers. Now, I know, Lynn, you like a sneaky early transfer to kind of beat the price rise, whereas I think both Ben and I on this, so I don't want to be unfair to you, Lynn. I will try and play devil's advocate for both sides, but we both do really, really late transfers, as people will know from our live streams. So, Lynn, do you want to start us off with maybe why you think that a price rise early transfer can be good sometimes?
I mainly do it when, let's start of the season, the first maybe 4 or 5 game weeks. I get on early because the price-wise, they fluctuate so much more then. And then if you get on them early enough, then you actually build a very good team value at the start of the season. So I do them at the start of the season, and I also do them quite often now when there's an international break or something that means that it's going to be 2 weeks before the next game. And that's simply because of mental health. I don't want to think about FPL. I don't want to follow price rise. I just want to get the player in I want, leave it, and then start up again when it's time.
I mean, throwing it to you, Ben, I think a lot of people have heard our viewpoints on this. Is there almost a fair justification that even with having the latest transfers as possible, you can wait till the last millisecond? People who have done that have been punished anyway because of late cancellations, because of late injuries. I mean, is it better to have that Linn kind of mentality? Say la vie, whatever happens, happens. I've made my transfer and, happens basically.
I mean, it depends on your own fantasy philosophy and how you play the game. For example, with myself being, focused on availability, almost, whether that's injury related or not. If I was to make an early transfer and that player wasn't to play for whatever reason, then I would not be happy. That would eat away at me. If I made a late transfer, I used all of the information that was to hand at my disposal, and that player still didn't play. Well, look, that is what happens. That's not on me. But I feel as if I've made that mistake if I don't follow the principles that are set out ahead of every single season. And for me is, let's wait until we have everything in hand. And that's not just purely down to availability. That can be down to how a manager may set up, what he's revealing in his press conference, what changes he might be making to the team, how the opposition could adapt to the visit. So what I'm trying to do is almost maximize my chances of a higher return by ensuring that, like I say, I have all of the information to hand.
But what happens if that little price rise means that you go from superstar Sam Maxim to the wonderful but flawed Geordie Joe Linton?
You are asking the wrong person here, by the way, because I couldn't tell you from one player to the next what any value is. So when it comes to my late transfers, I look at how much I've got in the bank, and then I look who I can bring in. I don't look at, this is not bullseye here. Look at what you could have had. I've got no idea what I could have had, but I know what I can buy, and I'm happy with that.
I mean, is that not a better way to go about it, Linn? Then you've waited for as long as possible. You've got the maximum information, and kind of like what Ben's saying there, it's not an opportunity lost, but an opportunity cost if you do buy the player and then they suddenly get injured.
But then, like Ben said, then he doesn't know what he could have had. And I like to know what I could have had and then make a decision. Is it worth the risk to go early or not to have this player?
It's an interesting one. I don't think we're going to get a solid answer on that one. But again, this is why we're evaluating. We're going through the year. This is something that Ben thinks he's got right. Linn thinks that she has got right. I think one of the last things that I want to talk about is the best teams kind of situation, because, we often kind of go, well, FPL's so simple, isn't it? You go for the best teams, you go for the best players from those best teams and then kind of work your way around it. But I think what has been quite interesting through the season, maybe coupling up with the form versus fixtures debate, is also the form versus fixtures versus context of the situation. I remember a little bit earlier in the season that West Ham were playing quite well. They had all rightish data, but then all of a sudden they had like a glut of injuries. And I remember at the time Ben said, I would not be investing in them now. They've got Europa League. They've got these injuries to key players. And then all of a sudden Antonio's output kind of plummeted. They stopped getting any sort of kind of defensive output as well. And the only one that was continuing was Bowen. So do you think that maybe the best situation is almost between the two, where you contextualize the best teams and the best players, but you really have to kind of nail down the reasons why you're bringing them in, Linn.
Yeah, in some ways. I find this one a bit difficult to answer because there's so much more to it than that. So partly you're right, partly you're wrong. Yeah, of course you need to look at the whole team and like, how is this going to affect, like if Antonio is out, how is this going to affect the team? Does that make Bowen a better asset, or does it make him a worse? And sometimes we don't actually have the facts. This has not happened before, so we don't have the data. And then we have to just make an educated guess. Is Bowen good enough to stand on his own and get me those points, or does he need Antonio?
Yeah. No, it's a fair point. And I think the thing is with the context as well, because kind of like we were explaining with Cristiano Ronaldo a little bit earlier, is kind of understanding the context of the club situation as well. They're in a bit of turmoil. Yes, the fixtures look good. Even if his data was amazing, you have to factor in the facts of the situation, that he is the age that he is. You know, the importance of the Man United squad is also, as Raj would say, it's a risk-reward situation. They would go, it's a bit risky to play him. The reward from this match against Aston Villa / Brentford, if he's rested for both, maybe, we don't know. But it would make sense to do that in the long-term context of their season, Ben. You know, so quite often, what are the kind of contexts that you look for when you're making transfers?
I think recent form is a really good indicator for me, whether it's the individual or the team, and maybe drill down in that. Is it home, away? Is it against specific opposition? Is it against specific, places, positions on the pitch? I'll stick with my hometown club, for example, Joe Linton or Alan Saint-Maximin. Do we prefer Alan Saint-Maximin when he's playing out on the left-hand side, as he did maybe under Steve Bruce, when he's making those deep lying runs and exploiting the space? Or do we prefer the Alan Saint-Maximin that was pushed up front with Callum Wilson, as a striker, as a centre-forward, who maybe didn't have that amount of freedom? Yes, he was a threat, but was his productivity, was his output, did he still pose that same offensive threat? So I think, like I say, you need to look at the form, you need to look at the fixtures, look at the opposition, and I try not to look too far ahead. I really do. A lot of it comes down to gut feeling. Do I like this player and do I not? And I tend, if I go for a transfer, if I go for a player and it feels right, then regardless of the outcome, whether it's a success or a failure, then I can't be disappointed with that. The worst thing that I can do internally for me is go against that inner belief, and for it then to fail, because then I get angry and I question why I made the move in the first place. So if I, do what I believe in, stick by that, on the understanding that sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But as long as that rationale is behind that decision-making process, however way I want to implement that, then, like I say, regardless of the outcome, I'm happy.
Yeah, I suppose it's kind of the way that, the best football teams play as well. They've got like almost a framework to lie back on if things don't work out, but the framework is successful, then it's just kind of bad luck or the situation. But hopefully this analysis of what has and hasn't worked for us this season brings you a bit of good luck and helps you towards the end of the season to that game week 38. I mean, it seems like a way off, but also it seems really soon as well. The season has flown by in its weird and wonderful way. But I'm going to wish everybody the best of luck. This is the first video, so make sure to be subscribe, because we've got a transfer analysis coming up as well. Who's been good, who has not been good transfers so far, and we will see you again very soon.